Welcome to Dad Talk Today. Dad Talk Today. The podcast for dads facing some of the toughest moments of their lives. We are here to walk with men through divorce, keep them connected to their kids, help them understand their rights, and work for change in family law courts. Moms, you are always welcome too. We are all about advocating for shared parenting and doing what is best for our kids. Here is your host, Eric Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dad Talk Today. I'm joined with Melissa Isaac, and we got a special guest, Mr. Robby Starbuck. Robby, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Doing good, man. Robby, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Seems like you wear many hats.
Yeah, so there's quite a few hats. A lot of people knew me already from being a director and producer in Hollywood. So I've directed, produced Oscar-winning actors, actresses, some of the biggest music stars in the world. But I came out as a conservative in 2015. I endorsed Trump then. Obviously, Hollywood was not super excited about that. So, that's when I kind of doubled down and I started to talk about politics regularly. And so I've been, all over media on all the major news networks talking about political issues. And at CPAC this year, I announced that I'm going to be running for Congress here in Tennessee in District 5.
That's awesome, man. And I know you mentioned this about your Congress run and some of the other things you got going on. I want to ask something really quick before we get into this, though. Being in that entertainment industry, and I've heard this from many of the actors and people that we've had on that have conservative views. What's that been like for you being a conservative in Hollywood?
I mean, there's absolutely zero acceptability for veering off of what they consider to be the acceptable point of view or the acceptable ideology. So, it's the minute that I endorsed Trump, I'd say it was about 85% of our business we lost within that first, few weeks or first month. And then the rest was contracts that companies couldn't get out of, that they had to, see out to the end of the contracts that were years later. So, but it really is, at least back in the day, I always say this, people know about how there was a blacklisting against people who were accused of being communist way back when in Hollywood. But the funny thing is back then, those people who were quote unquote blacklisted, they could work under pseudonyms still and everybody knew it and they were okay with that. It just couldn't be under the name that people associated with being communist. That's not the case anymore. You can't even do something along those lines now. It's just you are not accepted within any mainstream sector of entertainment if you are conservative.
Right, man. And that cancel culture, I think, is one of the biggest cancers that we've got going on in society today. It sickens me. And it seems like Hollywood is just completely ate up with it. Why do you think Hollywood has really developed this liberal culture that it has?
Well, it was by design, honestly. This is something where for a long time, if you have your gatekeepers be of a certain ideology and they are the ones who decide who gets the funding, who gets the push, who they turn into a celebrity, because it's a decision. Celebrities don't just pop up. This is decided by people behind closed doors. They're the ones who decide who gets what parts, how big their push is going to be, and things along those lines. They have a very clear sort of idea of who they want to be a star. And it's generally people who are very moldable, who are going to do as they're told, and who are going to walk the line that you tell them to walk. It's not very often that they find somebody and they say, oh, they seem like they're a very free thinker. Let's get behind them and risk what they're going to say next. So they like people they can control. And I think that this started really, I tell people, probably about 20 years ago, the subtle changes within the entertainment industry to veer towards leftism. And it's only become, totally apparent over the past few years because they no longer need to pretend. I mean, it is what it is, and it's out there and everybody knows it. And so at this point it's overt, but for a long time, those gatekeepers, they had a specific set of, qualities they wanted in people that they would push forward. And that's what we see today.
Well, what is it exactly about conservatism that the Hollywood is so against? You look at us as conservatives. I understand there's a difference between pro-life and pro-choice, but past that, you think big picture, are we all just wanting opportunities? Aren't we all just wanting enough to put food on the table, to buy a decent home for our families? What is it specifically about conservatism that Hollywood is so against?
Yeah, for the decision makers in Hollywood, they don't care about any of that stuff. It's about control. It's about, how much control, how much power do you have? It's a lot easier to amass control and power under leftism, even if it's something that goes as far as Marxism, because, you've seen in many of these places where Marxism takes hold, even though they'll become anti-corporatist, they will have sort of an oligarchical structure. So they'll have these oligarchs of all these different areas. And so they can cement their place of total control in a certain area. So leftism, at any degree, really, it's something that they prefer for the control and power. But it's also about, acceptability. At a certain point, even if you don't start with that ideology, if you want to be accepted within certain circles, you have to be open to the ideology. And eventually, it becomes the norm. But really, what they're so afraid of is freedom. Because if you have a free people, they're going to choose many different things. They're not all going to, walk in one direction. It's a lot harder to herd them together to want something. Under leftism, it's a lot easier to herd everybody to one thing. And for purposes of entertainment, that's a good thing for them. They want that. They want that easy ability to herd everybody towards one thing, whether it be a movie or music or whatever it is. That's sort of culturally why it fits their business model, because it's much easier to lean them into that one thing that they want to lean them into. But freedom is dangerous to them, not just in terms of their daily lives, but in terms of their business model. Because if people are free and they're going to, live out their values and seek out entertainment that reflects those values, that's dangerous for them.
Yeah. Robby, one of the biggest issues we talk about on the show is the fatherless epidemic. And I know you're no stranger to that. That's a conversation that you guys have a lot as well. But it seems like they have been no stranger to what goes on inside of Hollywood and with that cancel culture. It seems like the role of dad in so many of these films and so many of our sitcoms, he's always the big bumbling idiot that don't know how to take care of his kids. Why do you think inside the entertainment industry, they have really targeted the role of fathers?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because almost nobody ever even identifies this problem. They are doing everything they can to undermine the nuclear family, undermine the role of dads that they can in Hollywood. And again, this is about control. It's about power and control, because the state and leftism at its core is about the state and places of power being able to, and that's cultural institutions of power, being able to take on the role of the parent and remove the parent's role as much as possible. Because if the state and their cultural centers of power are all the ones running your kids' lives, your kids are going to grow up dutiful, compliant adults that do whatever the state tells them to do. And so the more you make parents seem like they're unnecessary, reductive in some way, that they're stupid, and that they just don't know what's going on, and they're just trying to make your life harder, or you're not able to have as much fun because of them, whatever it is you can do to undermine them serves Hollywood's purposes. And not, that's saying something. They're serious about this. So, a question I ask people, I actually just said this recently, and it went kind of viral. I said, why is it, if you look at Disney movies, in almost every single Disney movie, there's a dead parent, almost every single one. And that's not an exaggeration. Almost every single one has a dead parent or dead parents. What is the reason for that? And you could say, oh, it's the sort of long-term, hero archetype story where, you need to have this pain to achieve a result. There's plenty of different ways to have there be difficulty. In fact, you would think creatively, you would want to veer away from a storyline that's overdone. And that's something that, again, normal people don't want to watch the same thing over and over and over again. But that's essentially what they do, is they rehash the same story predicated on no parental roles involved.
It's interesting to talk to you about this, because bringing up Hollywood and bringing up the agenda, when you talk about Disney, or when you talk about, Hollywood agenda, people say, oh, that's crazy. That's just a, conspiracy theory kind of thing. But yet it is everywhere, and it's shoved down our throats. So even when you go to the family court system and you're in there, you're trying to almost paint a picture of a healthy family, right? Mom, dad, kids, or equal parenting, for parents, or equal parenting for dads. You're looked at with like you have three eyes. Like, that's just not the way society functions. But yeah, they don't acknowledge that Hollywood plays such a huge role in forming our opinions, in forming our perceptions of family. So do you think that these actors, do you think that they're aware of what they're doing, or you think they're just like, hey, I'm making money here?
To be perfectly honest, and I'm not trying to disparage actors, but I would say the a large portion of them have no idea what's going on. I mean, they read a script, they go ahead and they memorize it, they do their lines, they do it. They don't think about the cultural effect of what they're doing. And that's by design too. That's, like I said, they choose stars where they're not really going to ask questions. And in some cases, it's almost hard to even blame those stars because they don't have the intellectual capacity to be able to ask these questions and to be able to dive deep on them. They just do as they're told and they collect their paycheck. But at the end of the day, that's a problem for the rest of us. And I think something for people who maybe question there being a political end to what they're doing in Hollywood, if you at least understand the parent issue here, you can take that and apply it to politics because they're doing the same thing. You know, I can give you an example of how they're trying to sort of brainwash our kids, you know, and I can do a million of these examples, but I'll give you just one. I'll give you two. Recent Dora the Explorer movie and recent Scooby-Doo movie, okay? In the recent Dora the Explorer movie, or I'll start with Scooby-Doo. In the recent Scooby-Doo movie, they have multiple references to Ruth Bader Ginsburg being a hero of women's rights and, you know, so on and so forth. They have people dress up as her. They attack what they call toxic masculinity, and then they promote Tinder in the movie, okay? Why would you need to mention Tinder in a kid's movie, you know, in Scooby-Doo? And then in the most recent Dora the Explorer movie, again, they go into a new wave of feminism. They start talking about that, and they back again Ruth Bader Ginsburg as a hero of women's rights and have somebody dress up as her, okay? These are like, they subtly push these ideas throughout a child's life, their whole life. And it goes along with the parent issues, same thing, undermining the parent baked into it. And the more impressions you have, there's something called the mere exposure effect. The more times you expose somebody to an idea, the more likely they become to accept the idea as fact or to accept it as a credible idea. And so they do this throughout a child's life. And then now what's so dangerous is this is then reflected at school and academia throughout their life as well, as we've seen in schools with things like critical race theory and the 1619 Project. These things continue to be messaged to them throughout that part of their day too. So even if you're raised by the most conservative parents, if you go to a normal school and you consume normal entertainment, you know, even somewhat, you know, of a filter, let's say, you're reflected more leftism and more of this undermining of parents than anything else. Okay. And that's what you consume your whole life. It's much more likely that you turn against the values you were raised with.
Right. And, you know, I've heard that even with advertising, they say a person has to see an ad 6 or 7 times before they really start falling for it. And we're seeing that in our entertainment. You know, my wife was watching a show not long ago and the mom got a job. She was a stay-at-home mom, but she gets a job and the kids are going to have to stay with dad. And he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to take care of them? And the whole episode was lined about how this dad wasn't going to know how to take care of his kids. There's consequences to stuff like that, you know. Absolutely. And you know, a lot of people have a focus on trying to change the laws, but trying to change the laws without first changing the narrative only does so much. I'm curious, Robby, what are some solutions or what are some things that you think we could do outside of legislation that can help with these issues?
Well, culturally, you know, I think it's important for people like us to be outspoken about the role of a father. So like myself, I'm quick to correct people. I've had this situation come up before where I'm watching our kids, hanging out with our kids, and my wife's doing something, you know, away from us. You know, she's out with a friend or at a meeting or whatever it is. And somebody will refer to it as babysitting. And, you know, you correct that and you go, I'm not babysitting my own kids. These are my kids. You know, I'm not a babysitter. I'm their dad. Right. This is my job. The more we sort of set the standard of what a man's role is, and we praise men for being real fathers and being there, being present, listening, you know, asking the right questions, and we can be leaders and teach men how to do this and make it sort of a culture of being aspirational. I think we're going to see a lot of change. If we can make it aspirational to be a great dad, instead of make it sound like it's so much work to be a great dad, we're going to see more dads step up. But I think, again, too, another thing we need to be really, 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 really clear about is the statistics. The statistics show that kids who don't have a dad, they have terrible outcomes in every facet of life. And the more we can message on those things and be very clear about that, I think we also can shift the culture. But in terms of entertainment, I think that that's an area where we could see alternative content creators bring things to the table where we center the nuclear family and we make it clear that there's a role for moms and dads, and that moms and dads have equal jobs with their kids, and that they're responsible for raising these little beautiful human beings into responsible, intelligent, amazing adults. And I think that's where we could see some change.
And I think we need to be very specific too, because we say, hey, look, dads are important, but this every other weekend dad, that's not considered a dad. Those children are still considered dad deprived. So I think we need to be specific with that. We have research out there. This is anything less than 35 or 40% is considered dad deprived. And another thing too, we have to start walking the walk. I know I was 16 months pregnant, and I had a 16-month-old, and I was about 6 months pregnant, and I was at military training, and I would tell people when I have a 16-month-old, and they would say, well, where is she? I'm like, well, she's home with her daddy. And they're like, you left a 16-year-old with your husband? Yeah, it's her daddy, right? So we as women have to not be maternal gatekeepers as well. And I think that's a really good thing that you guys are doing, is bringing that to the forefront, is don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And that goes for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I will say I was very confused when you said you were 16 months into your pregnancy. I was
be very painful. I was a 16-month-old. Yeah.
That was funny though.
Yeah, and you got this black cloud, and we see all the gender confusion that's going on right now, and we talk about toxic masculinity. I think it's in the African American household. We are nearing 80% of those households are without a father in the home. That's 4 out of every 5 children. That's pretty alarming statistics. We see 1 in every 3 children are without a dad, and that's in all races right now. I think a lot of this has to do with what's going on in family court as well. 85% of the time, the dad is going to be a non-custodial parent to their child. We've been trying to get some legislation going around that would give what's called shared parenting, a 50-50 presumption. It's a starting point that mom and dad are both fit, willing, and able. They're going to do both of they're going to come together and parent the child equal. And, man, we've had such a hard time getting some legislation like that. And it's hard to get this fatherless problem solved when we do not have legislation and laws that protect the role of dad in the house. I'm curious, if you get in Congress, what are some more solutions that you think we could bring legislatively to get some relief on this?
Well, legislatively, I think that on a state level, you're probably going to have more success than federally, because federally, like you said, there's so many legislators who will just not touch this issue. But on a state level, you may have some luck getting, through to some people. I find it really interesting that, the Democratic Party, they're on this big push for equality, but it's interesting the things that they don't want to be equal, and this is one of them. They don't want fathers to have, a sort of equal right to parent their child. They don't want to have gender parity when it comes to coal mines or, jobs like, catching snakes. We were just talking about this yesterday, you don't see them being like, oh, we need more women rattlesnake hunting, or we need more women in coal mines. There's certain areas where they suddenly forget about equality and they don't want it. And so I think we need to figure out how we can use their own virtue signaling against them in this regard, so that they feel some pressure to apply their standards equally across the board. I'm not very confident that they ever will, but I do think on a state level, you may have some luck getting some things done. And I think one of them is, again, changing this assumption in courts that from the outset, a judge assumes that a father is just incapable of taking care of their kids. I think that that's a wrong-headed assumption to have, and it's something that we do need to maybe look at on a state level legislatively, making very clear that you need to start out from a place of presuming that they're equal parents.
Right. I'm right there with you, man. And, a lot of what we talk about is around those family court issues, because I know so many fathers that are trying to be in their children's life. They paid hundreds of thousands of dollars and keep coming up on the short end of the stick. And they're like, what am I supposed to do? This is where I was told to go get justice. I want to be a parent, and they're not allowing me, but I know there's other situations that are aiding in that breakdown of the nuclear family. What are some of the things you think that are not as talked about, maybe not as popular, Robby, that people need to know about with the breakdown in the family? I believe this is a part of the Communist Manifesto. It's going as planned. And if we don't get some awareness behind it, it's just going to keep getting worse.
Absolutely. So this, again, it ties in just like entertainment to the goals of Marxism. There's a reason why the Black Lives Matter organization put out there that they are working to end the Western nuclear family. They said that. Those were their own words on their own website, and they're open about it because that's what Marxism leads to. Like I said with entertainment, the goal is to remove as much of the parental role as you can, and that goes both ways, not just dads, but dads and moms. They want to remove that and replace it with the state. And so, I think what they're doing now, they're sadly having a lot of success. And that's why I do think in 2022, one of the things that I've been saying a lot is I think that this issue about parental rights and critical race theory is actually going to become a major election issue in 2022 that will decide many races across the country. And I think you're going to see a surprising number of parents who have traditionally voted Democrat turn over and say, you know what, this is a bridge I won't cross, or stay home and not vote because of that bridge that they don't want to cross. But, I think one of the things we need to talk about more is that there's a lot of focus on the damage that this does to kids, and rightfully so. That's the real priority here, is that, a child having the best life they could possibly have. But, I think we need to talk more about what men are missing out on. You talked about all the men who are not in the home in the African-American community and in every other community. And what I want to see happen more is strong dads standing up and being like, hey man, you're actually missing out. You're missing out on something really incredible, because being a dad is a gift. It's one of the most incredible things that I could ever imagine. I never imagined it would be as rewarding as it is to be a dad. I mean, the feeling when you come into a room and your kids just run up to you and throw their arms around you and want to know everything about your day and can't stop giving you kisses and hugs is something that, like, you just feel, it feels otherworldly in terms of like having that kind of love that just, there's no conditions on it. It's unconditional. And your kids just like, they want you, they need your leadership, and you have such an important role in where they're going to end up in life. And I think that that's something more men need to be proud of and need to understand that they're missing out on if they're not present.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because, I know Eric has gotten a lot of slack because it's Dad Talk Today. They say, well, you might want to take the dad out of there. You're going to feel like, mothers are alienated. But here's the thing is, you look at the statistics, you look at dads are the ones that are being kept out of these children's lives. So dads need to say, you know what? No, I'm a dad. I want to be a dad. I'm proud to be a dad. And dads need their rights. Parents need rights as well. Because I know that over the years of legislation, they say, no, we need to focus on the kids because it's not politically correct to advocate for dads. I'm about sick of hearing that. I'm a men's rights attorney, I'm a father's rights attorney. And by gosh, you look at the stats, you look at what's happening in court. We need men to say, no, I'm a dad. I'm proud to be a dad. I'm missing out. So I'm so glad that you said that, because it seems to be not politically correct.
But now you can take this back to what we were talking about a while ago, toxic masculinity. It's not cool to be a man anymore.
Oh, not at all.
They say that we're suffering from toxic masculinity, but the statistics show that we're suffering from a lack of masculinity. But if you go to entertainment, if you go to the education system, what I call the indoctrination system, every little facet of society is telling men anything that has to do with being a man is toxic. Why would they want to be a man? Why would they want to step up and be a father when the statistics and everything, especially family court, is telling them that they're not worth it? We do need to speak out.
You nailed it. The problem is not toxic masculinity. The problem is a lack of masculinity. And the things that they define as toxic masculinity are things that have nothing to do with masculinity. Killing or beating your significant other has nothing to do with your masculinity. In fact, it makes you less of a man that you have to go to that place where you would hit a woman or hurt a woman. This whole idea is just another one of those theories they make up to rip away norms in society. And that's what Marxists do. That's the goal. So if you can attach all of the healthy things about masculinity, being protective, providing, and all these different things that are good traits, if you can rip that away by attaching things that have nothing to do with it, then that serves their goals. Because the more that we can't define who we are, and the more we change our shared language and understanding of society, the more they can step in and define it for us. And that's ultimately the goal. But I will say, for anybody who thinks that there's not a crisis in masculinity, we've reached the point where it's taking a guy in a man bun to tell people like, man, guys, man up.
Yep.
Like we need to be men, and we need to embrace masculinity. It's a healthy thing to be a strong dad, to be a strong man, to care about your family, to be protective. There's nothing in those traits that is wrong-headed. You know, there's a reason that it's baked into us as men to have these feelings. It's not something that you need to, you know, push away and pretend is unhealthy, or that we need to have the exact same thoughts as women. We're inherently different for great reasons. Women have strengths that we don't have. We have strengths that they traditionally don't have. Is that always the case? No. But if you're speaking generally, we have a lot of strengths they don't have. They have a lot of strengths we don't have. And that's why we are such a great fit together, to serve each other's weaknesses and to make each other stronger.
Do you think that the confusion of those roles is also what's contributing to the confusion of the gender that we're seeing right now? Nobody, I mean, somebody can identify as whatever they want. I tell you, it's kind of sad. I went in Target the other day. All the boys look like girls and the girls look like boys. It's like people are confused on who they are.
Yeah, I'll say, you know, is there some relation in the issues? I'm sure there is, but honestly, it's more predicated on the idea with Marxists that you need to change everything. You need to create so much chaos, so much division, and make it so uncomfortable that, you know, you rip away all those foundations of a healthy society. And gender's one of them. You know, so I think the more you can, and it also serves the need of removing the parent's role as well, because there's an understanding with them that a lot of parents are not going to be, you know, really receptive to this idea that their child is suddenly another sex. So I think when they do this, they know you're going to create division in the family. And beyond creating that division in the family, you're going to have the child feel less connected to their parent. In fact, their parent is disconnected from them. And that leads to, again, the state being the natural person to step in and say, we love you, we'll take care of you. And ultimately, that's more so of the goal, I think, is to do that and to rip away masculinity from men. Because, you know, a strong society, a free society with free thinking men, strong men, is a society that you cannot take over. You can't conquer. A society that's weakened, divided, destroyed on many levels foundationally is a society you can take over. And so that's the conditions they're trying to create, is weaken us at all these different pillars so that, you know, we're just divided in so many different directions. You can't really launch a cohesive, protective strategy to keep a society.
So, go ahead. What can our lawmakers do to get in our schools and address these teachers who are spewing their liberal agendas or any political agenda, and look at our curriculums? It doesn't seem like anybody's going in there and really working on our schools.
Yeah, so this is a big one for me. Okay, so this is an issue I'm going to be all over in Congress. Number one, school choice is just crucial, because the money needs to follow the child to whatever school they go to. If you're a parent and your kid automatically has to go to public school, and let's say that the city earmarks $14,000 a year for your child to go to public school, your public school is underperforming in every way. They have teachers pushing all this political stuff. They're pushing critical race theory. And you say, you know what, this is not a healthy place for my kid. I want them to go to this private school over here, this religious school over here. You should be able to remove your child, take the money that's earmarked for them there, and take it to whatever school you want to take them to. And so that's one way that you sort of smoke this crazy ideology out, is by saying parents are going to leave, and you remove their funding, you remove the money that is allowing them to do this. And it's why Democrats are so anti-school choice, because they know what will happen if parents have a choice. Parents are going to walk away from these schools. And I think on the flip side of that, number one, you have to ban critical race theory. It's just an absolute must. Critical race theory is one of these points where you're trying to make people hate themselves, okay? And you're trying to also change children's first instinct from finding out, hey, who do I have things in common with? Who am I going to be friends with, based on this idea that we have commonalities, that we have shared, you know, hobbies or whatever it is. Instead, you replace that with, what color is this child? That's what they change that first thought to. Instead of like, hey, we both like swings, let's swing. It becomes, hey, there's my black friend, or there's my Hispanic friend. I don't want to be, as a Latino, I don't want to be anybody's token Latino friend. I just want somebody to be my friend if they like me. We have shared common interests, you know. And I think critical race theory is so destructive on that level, because it's creating all these divisive, chaotic points that allow people on the left to come in and destabilize and take control. So that's another area that we need to get on. But political neutrality, actually, this is one some people are surprised on with me, but I think that schools need to be politically neutral. I think that kids are entitled to be kids, and that we need to just remove this over politicization of everything from their purview. So on that point, what I would like to do is, in every state, I think that there should be a parental reporting option for violations of critical race theory and political neutrality laws. And so a parent should be able to report and say, their teacher did this, they said they vote for X or whatever. You should know who your teacher votes for. And they report it. There should be a board of parents made up of parents, a parent representative from each county and in that state. And then the parents decide what the outcome is. So if the parents all collectively on that board decide this teacher needs to go, there's been 3 violations, this is not changing, they can get rid of them and have the power to. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is like some of the critical race theory bills that are going on, in fact, one here in Tennessee, the power falls with somebody who's our education secretary. Well, our education secretary in Tennessee went to Berkeley, and she's very left-minded. I have a lot of misgivings about this idea that she will enforce a law that is going to fly in the face of things that they're very friendly to at Berkeley and that she's seemingly very friendly to. So I think we need to put the power in the hands of parents, not in the hands of one official that has been chosen by a governor. We need to go ahead and put the parents in control again.
You know, speaking about putting the parents in control, there was a bill that just went through in the state of Connecticut. I had just went up there. I was talking to a legislator about getting some shared parenting going. And then a few days later, I go online and I see thousands of parents lined out upside the Capitol. They are getting a bill that takes away religious exemption and takes away a parent's choice whether or not to get their child vaccinated. And if you do not vaccinate your child, they will no longer be able to go to school. And for some, that might not seem like such a big deal. We get told all the time, man, you just need to keep politics out of it. You need to keep politics out of it. And it's like, guys, you need to keep your eyes on stuff like this, because every little thing that they push through that takes away choice for the parents to parent their kids the way they want to parent them, we're treading dangerous waters here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm fully with you on this. You know, Rand Paul and I both have sort of taken the same position that, look, number one, natural immunity is a long regarded science. So if you believe in science, you believe in medicine, this is something that has a enormous history of studies to back up your immunity once you've had it afterwards. It's actually, you know, the norm has been you don't vaccinate. But beyond that, no matter what the reason is, I believe in freedom. So even if I disagree with the way somebody uses that freedom, I'm going to fight for freedom. So I believe in full medical freedom. Parents have to have the choice to do whatever they believe is right for their child. No ifs, ands, or buts, no state intervention. A parent needs to make the decision what's best for their child. We are not a socialist country. I'll do everything in my power to make sure we never are. And the reason for that is just, I mean, it's too numerous to list, but in those societies, the state takes control and they decide for you what's right for your child. They decide that collectively, even if it may risk your child or may risk you or whatever it is, your child's life, your life are less valuable than the collective health. And that's not how you run a free society. So, you know, this idea that you can hold people down and force them through coercion it should disgust everybody. Because let me ask you a question. Anybody who's on board with this idea that you should force people to put a medicine that they don't want in their body, when has there ever been a country who has done that, who turned out to be the good guys? Mm-hmm. That's a very simple question for you to like go back in history and look at. You're not going to find a country where they were the good guys when they force medicate people. And that's whether that medication, I don't care if it's vitamin D, and vitamin D is fantastic for you. I don't care what it is. Force medicating your citizens has never turned out well. It's never been a positive thing. It always led to deeper, darker things down the road. And so people should be very afraid of that, no matter what their status is, no matter what they plan to do. That needs to be at the forefront. People need to be free to make their decision.
Yeah, I say that's so important too. And let me hit this real quick, Eric, is, you know, we look in the family court system too, and how, you know, dads mainly have lost the ability to make decisions. And so they say, well, I have joint legal custody. But she has primary custody, and really that means is he has the right to be a visitor, but he can't make any decisions as to school choice, as to medical decisions, as to just to really anything. So we as a society has sat back and we've watched the slow erosion of taking away our rights and making, instead of the parents the decision maker, letting the judge being the final decision maker of these issues surrounding our children, down to which sports they can attend if the parents can't agree. Well, and so we're saying, we're slowly saying, okay, we're okay with the state making these decisions, someone who doesn't know my children. So, we as a society have to take responsibility for the declination of our rights, because we have really just kind of handed it over. And you look at all these financial incentives, and they were done on the federal level, but there's so much that has to be addressed and undone. But it's like the knot is tied so tight. How do we start to loosen this knot?
Well, I think, it goes back to the state level, because federally, if you try to do this, is going to be just a continual fight. And that fight is going to change every 2 years. And it's going to you're going to feel like you're hitting your head against a wall. And that's probably how a lot of people feel who have been trying to make progress federally. So on a state level, an issue like this, where it's hard to get that national, sort of push to be able to get something done. Right. I think that, you have to organize. That's one of the strengths of the left. And it's why you see them do so well legislatively, is that they organize really well. They make it very clear what their goals are. They're great with marketing what that goal is and how to get it done. And so you have to look at, how does this look to someone who knows nothing about the issue? Because one mistake I see people make is they go about organizing around an issue and they are marketing of it. They don't realize they're marketing a movement or they're marketing an idea. And when they go out in front of a building and they just cuss at elected officials, that's not something that is very, it's not going to bring a lot of people over to your side. It's not a very convincing argument to people. Your random person who's watching from the middle saying what's going on here is watching and saying they look crazy, they look sane. You always want the person in the middle to be able to look at you and say, they seem like the sane one. If you don't seem like the sane one, you're going to have trouble bringing people to your side. So that's one thing I would recommend to people, is make sure that you have a strategy, you have a plan, and you're selling this idea, this message, this legislation to people who know nothing about it. So you have to be very clear on that and how you're going to do that. That's something that I think people don't spend enough time on. And the more time you spend on that, the easier your sell is going to be, both to legislators and to the public, to get behind your idea.
Robby, one thing that I really appreciate, you earlier, you was talking about freedom, and you was talking about in schools having that political neutrality there. And you're a conservative, as the rest of us are, but having that neutrality there and being able to discuss with someone ideals, maybe, beliefs that are not the same as ours. Where in society have we lost that ability to have discussions with people on the other side?
Again, I feel bad almost blaming everything on this new Marxist left, but really that's where it came from. They created this idea that if you dissent, you're not just somebody they disagree with. You're not somebody that they disagree with vehemently. You're not somebody that is on the other side. You are a racist, bigot, misogynist, every ist and ism in the book. They dehumanize you. They make you sound like the absolute scum of the earth. This came from their side, okay? And so when you treat people like that, you create an environment and a culture norm that we can't have these conversations anymore. We can't have open debate. I've had some people ask me, Robby, why don't you have on somebody from the other side to debate you on issues? And I go, I've tried. I've invited every member of the squad. I've invited most people in left-leaning media. I've literally offered to put up $50,000 for St. Jude's. So it's like a charity deal. They do not want to debate, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason they don't want to debate, and it's because they know when you get into a debate of the ideas, their ideas will crumble, and they're aware of that. But the thing is with leftism is that their power, everything they do, even if they know that it's nonsensical, it serves their needs, it serves their ends. And so in some weird form of irony, the thing they're pushing for the collective good is really about their own individual good. And so in some weird, sick, twisted way, they're an enemy of their own ideology. But that's where we're at, is they've pushed this idea because, again, it's another division point to weaken society so that you can take it over and create it in your own image.
Okay. You know, I know you're a proud father, and I think all of us here are wanting to leave the world in a better place than the way we found it, especially for our children. I'm curious, what are some of the reasons behind you wanting to run for office, and what are some of the things you're hoping to do?
Well, my family came from Cuba. My mom came here, and my grandparents, great grandparents, and they lost a country. They lost a country to this same thing. Everything that we're experiencing now happened in Cuba. Okay. It happened in Venezuela. It happened in China. You know, these are cultural Marxist revolutions. They have the same ingredients, same sort of things, even the same flowery language to go along with selling the idea of Marxism. The denials of Marxism, and then you have certain people just put it out there blatantly, like Patrisse Cullors at BLM saying, I am a trained Marxist. You have all these signs leading up, okay? And I recognize those signs. They were baked into my DNA as a child. I have heard everything that happened to my family there. They lost everything they ever worked for. And so these signs are baked into you as a child of a refugee from this system. And, you know, recognizing those things were coming, I was able to have this thought process where I said, okay, I can insulate my own family. I can protect my own family by saying nothing, because I'm in Hollywood. I'm a successful director. If I just say nothing, we're fine. What's going to happen to the rest of society, though? Where are they going to go? Where are my grandchildren going to go in life? What opportunities will they have? Because I might be able to protect my family now, but I won't be able to protect them after I'm dead.
That's right.
And so that's where I made this critical decision. You need to go out there. You need to go out there. You know what's going to happen. They're going to blacklist you, but you need to go out there and be honest and talk about politics, because if you don't, you're going to have the same regret so many other Cubans had. They regretted not standing up. They regretted not standing up for what they believe in their country. And it was all out of fear of losing a friend or having some people mad at them or not go to their business or ruffling too many feathers. And the truth is that all of those things don't matter anymore, because if you don't stand up and your country's stolen from you and you lose everything you ever worked for and you're essentially, you know, a slave to Marxism, then, you know, what was the point in the first place of not standing up? So that's why I choose to stand up and to make sure that I do everything in my power to make sure that my children and my grandchildren are going to have the same opportunities to achieve the American dream that I had. The child of a penniless refugee was able to, in his lifetime, go from that to being a successful director in Hollywood, directing all these big stars, and then become a candidate for United States Congress. That's only possible in America. It's only possible in a free country. It's not possible in China. It's not possible anywhere else. It's possible here. And so I want to protect that freedom and that greatness and exceptionalism so that our kids have those opportunities.
There you go, man. I love it. And I know you got your hands involved in a few different things. There's something I wanted to talk to you about, though. Freedom Forever. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what that is and how they can get involved?
Yeah, so if you want to support candidates like me, you want to support candidates who are putting freedom first, okay? Freedom is the primary issue, saying we need to make sure that the people are free and that we're fighting for our foundational values. Then sign up at freedomforever.us. That's freedomforever.us. Sign up to volunteer there, and we're going to have an action plan for you to be able to organize locally, for you to be able to phone bank locally, for you to be able to do whatever you don't have to live in Tennessee, anywhere in the country. You can sign up, and we'll help you even in your own area with other candidates there to identify who's standing for freedom and who's not. So go ahead and sign up, freedomforever.us.
Gotcha, man. Is there any new movies coming up? I mean, what else you got in store for us?
I'm going to be pretty busy running this race. I'll be pretty busy on this. I'm definitely doing a lot of media, so I'll probably be, on a lot of shows here and there. I'll be back on the Candace Owens shows soon. I believe so. There's a lot of stuff like that. But in terms of entertainment projects, the only one that I have right in front of me that we're probably going to go ahead and do soon is let's say a free thinking version of SNL, just a comedy skit show that serves the general public, that has none of the crazy biases that we've seen SNL take on, just something that's funny that people can laugh at. That's something that I feel like is culturally necessary right now. With all of the craziness in the world, we need to just be able to laugh again and not have it baked in with a million political, biases.
Right.
I'm with you, brother. I mean, laughter is medicine for the soul. And I think sometimes these issues get so serious, some people forget how to smile. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. If anybody wanted to keep up with you on your campaign, see what you got going on, where can they find you?
I'm at Robby Starbuck, Robby with a Y, at Robby Starbuck on every social media platform. So that's the best place to see my daily thoughts and daily direction of what's going on in my campaign. But freedomforever.us is the key place if you want to join my team, volunteer. I'm going to be doing Zoom sessions with you guys and stuff like that to make sure that we're organized and that we're able to win in 2022 so that we can flip the house and take control of it.
All right, man. Well, brother, I appreciate it so much. There was a lot of viewpoints you brought to the table today. I definitely feel, I mean, you educated me there a little bit. I didn't realize, you know, the Marxist and Communist Manifesto, that's really big stuff that people need to be aware of, because this is something that's going right as they planned it. And whether you want to get involved in politics or not, guys, you need to be keeping an eye on what's going on. This is why your family's breaking up. This is why we're going through these situations. And if you don't stand up and do something, you know, you see the future for your kids and your grandkids. So, Robby, I'm glad to see we got men like you running in office, and it was a pleasure to talk to you today, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And to just, you know, back up what you said, this isn't about right or left. It's not about Republican or Democrat. It's about good and evil. It's about making sure that, you know, we protect against having Marxists take over this country. So, you know, if you're an old school Democrat, you voted that way for your whole life, just consider the issues, and what our future is going to look like if we go this direction of, you know, hard left Marxist sort of rule. And then also consider that there's candidates like me who may have an R next to their name, but we are freedom oriented. We want to make sure you have choice in your life and that you're a free human being and that your rights are protected. And I think that right now, honestly, you're closer to us than you are to them. So I would consider that, and consider this a battle of good versus evil, not Democrat versus Republican.
There you go. Robby, Melissa, it's been a pleasure, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Talk to you guys soon.
You.
All right.